Hi everybody, welcome to Module 6. So tonight is a wind chill advisory and I'm recording this in my basement, which isn't heated. So this will probably be a short one. Looking up at the weather dial, we are somewhere in the upper 50s at the moment, so not too bad I guess, as long as we don't have to stay down here too long. I do have one more video to record after this one for a different project, but I just want to share a little piece of humor. I checked my Google AdSense account, and I'm not sure if any of you are aware of that, but you can monetize some websites where Google will put their ads up, and if people click on them, you get a couple pennies or whatever. And I had a few websites from it years ago, and they were largely around adjunct faculty teaching and things like that. They still tend to generate a little bit of revenue, a couple cents a month. So I'm up to $19.23, and you don't get paid out until you get at least $100. So at this pace, probably another 30, 40 years, that check will be arriving in the mailbox. I do not monetize any of the YouTube videos for courses, so if you do see an ad come up, that's just done by YouTube. That's not done by me. But I just thought that was kind of funny because I'm like, $19.23. Yay! I think I was at $19.18 a month or two ago. So a few shout outs this week. One is Whitney talking about co-teaching and the need for common planning time and how important that is. More and more schools looking at adjusting their schedules to accommodate common planning time and I've seen elementaries go to like a trimester format. It's not impossible though. It is, very much necessary if you are going to do co-teaching. And then there's a concept called looping, and I don't know if I talked about it much before, but looping, for those of you who aren't familiar, would be if a student is with a first grade teacher, then the following year that student is with that teacher in second grade. The teacher follows that student. And you can loop for 1 or 2 years. And I worked in a school that looped a number of years ago, also co-taught and looped, and it was very effective because students didn't have to relearn the teacher and the teacher didn't have to relearn the students, the expectations and the learning styles. And they always seem to be kind of hitting the ground running when the school year started, and not usually that couple week phase of understanding what the expectations were of the teacher and the teacher getting to know the names of the kids. So again, I'm not sure why looping has kind of vanished to some extent, but I liked it and thought it was effective, and it fits very well with co-teaching, and of course common planning time. Vanessa, you talked about teach and assist, and also that I liked your statement of it might encourage daydreamers, because they would know that if they didn't catch the material the first time around, someone would be coming back and checking in on their understanding and then helping them out. So hopefully we don't have that, but so I forget what movie it was, but there was a movie that said young kids should be able to dream during school. I'm not sure how much we want them daydreaming though. So let's talk about Module 6. So Module 6 focuses on Universal Design for Learning, UDL. And UDL benefits all students, and including students with special needs, English language learners, students without disabilities that might have a weaker area in math or science or reading or whatever. But it also addresses the fact that not all students are visual learners, and things are built traditionally in schools to be very, very heavy on visual learning, because 70% of learning does happen via visual intake. And we tend to forget that some students are auditory learners, some students are tactile learners, some full sensory, olfactory. Um, it really there's really a wide range of senses that students use to learn. But I do think we tend to build things really heavy on the visual, and if we pay attention to making sure that we're including auditorily presented information, I think it also helps students to hone their listening skills. There's a software program, it's called Get M on Task, Get apostrophe EM on Task. And it's not very much money. And you purchase it, basically install it on a computer, and at random intervals, there's little sounds that are made, like a chicken noise or cow, or you can program different things. And when students hear that noise in the background, they put a little check up in the corner on their desk on a piece of paper that's up there. And then, at the end of the day, the teacher counts, and if you're close to the number of checks, then you get your name tossed into like a fish bowl or something. But it's amazingly effective if you check it out, of having students really focus in on the auditory environment. So a couple things with universal design for learning. So in my environment, I'm working with students who have some type of visual impairment, if not a full visual impairment, blindness. And a lot of UDL is not compatible for students that are blind. What I mean by that is Facebook, for example, isn't very compatible if you're visually impaired. There are features such as voice overlay, meaning you can turn on the iPad or iPhone, probably on any phone, but the smartphone, where the buttons will be, if you press on it, it'll tell you what it is, and then you can keep scrolling through and things like that. But there's a lot of things such as boxes and forms and other things that really just aren't compatible with current that type of technology. So UDL hasn't really become available too much to students who are visually impaired. So that's something when I talk about web-based materials. And we're just starting to see, actually, at Wisconsin Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, we have 3D printers at the school. So when we teach concepts about, map of Wisconsin, Mississippi River, and things like that, the map gets printed out in 3D. So you feel the map and you feel where the Wisconsin River is. It's pretty amazing. And you can also have 3D, printed things that you can color in and things like that. But making graphing done, so a graph comes up in 3D, so you can feel where the grid marks and things are, and it's printed that way. So UDL and 3D printing, those two fit together really well when it comes to students with visual impairments, and I believe students with in general. I mean, if you're talking about Wisconsin and you're talking about the Kettle Moraine region and glaciers leaving, scarring the land and so forth, and if you can actually print out that map of Wisconsin, and you can do these with the printer, it's really not very much. I mean, you could probably do it so every kid could have their own if you did a smaller one, and they can actually tactily see where the raised areas are, where the lower areas are, feel it, and bring that whole 3D concept to it. That's universal design for learning. There you're using not only visual, but you're using tactile in that sense too. So I have one of the things that I've seen done, and I don't think this is done enough, is to have different ways for students to demonstrate learning. Typically, it's one way. Like, this is the assignment, and this is you're going to write up this report or this presentation. You can maybe there's two choices. You can do an oral presentation or a written presentation. But as far as like creativity and ways to demonstrate learning, those seem to still be pretty narrow and pretty convergent, such as, maybe here are your three choices versus I need you to demonstrate the concept of gravity and that things, fall at the same speed or whatever it is. And you figure out how you're going to do that. So in that case, then that's divergent, and you're opening up a lot of options for universal design for learning for students to go at it, different ways they can demonstrate that, or even maybe through technology. And so those are two different things. It's the one thing to be convergent and say, you have two choices or three, or to be divergent and say, this is the concept I need you to demonstrate that you understand. And I really don't, it's not that important to me of how you go about doing it, but that you're able to effectively do it. One thing I've seen too is exemplars placed all over classrooms. And so if, for a certain assignment, there might be previous students' work, or the teacher might have work that's created that would be affiliated with a rubric. And again, this can happen at elementary too, and saying this is what a level 4 paper looks like. Maybe level 4 is what you're aiming for. This is what a level 3 paper or assignment or project looks like, and it's all in one area. This is a level 2, so, and here's what a level 1 is, and this isn't acceptable. That is so helpful for students to see that, to really just load up on exemplars. And it was kind of funny, not really funny, but a few years ago, the DPI, when they changed over into their PDP plans for transition, one of the arguments that I made to the department was put some examples out there on your website, and put more examples actually, of some IEPs and so forth, so we get an idea of what you're looking for. And the department was reluctant to do that. And they wouldn't come out and say exactly why, but my belief is, they didn't want to post an example for two reasons. One is if something was wrong with it, then you're posting an example that you have to take the blame on. And the second one was kind of this quasi statement of, well, if we post it one way, then everyone's going to do it that way. Well, okay, a few things with that is, one is, if you post it that way and it's the right way to do it, and that's the way you want people to do it, then what's wrong with that? But if we're looking at, universal design for learning and other ways for people to express learning, and you're posting something as an example, I think, as educators, we're sharp enough to figure out, okay, here's ways that we can take this and modify it so the heart of the core contents of this assignment are still met by doing it in different modalities. So that's one thing I guess always kind of frustrated me a little bit, is I don't think there were a lot of exemplars that were put out there by the department. And the ones that were put out were extremely, extremely safe. But I encourage you, when you're working in an inclusive setting, to have your station where, here's level 4 work. Here's what it looks like. Here's what it looks like if it's a 3D diorama. Here's what it looks like if it's, a book that you're writing and illustrating. Here's what it looks like if you're making a PowerPoint. Here's what it looks like if you're, writing a report, a timeline, whatever it is. I mean, different things. Here's what it looks like. And then your rubric, that you have this, this, and this, and this addressed, and you explain that and show students, say, here's how this is addressed in each of these. So I understand that, the person is understanding the concept of topography or whatever it is. Trust me, that works very well. We don't realize how abstract we make things for students when we talk about concepts. And when we talk about what our expectations are for assignments versus if we just show some examples. And again, there is this apprehension between with some people that, well, if I show specific examples, then all I'm going to get is someone that's going to recreate that example. And again, I just don't think that that's going to be prevalent. And I think you can upfront say, I don't want you to recreate what's here. I mean, if this gives you an idea of something that you want to do, but have faith in your students, and it's just like the DPI having faith in teachers to be original and take things and customize them out. So there's my talk on exemplars. And one of the things too is to have students do a self-rating of their work against the exemplars. So before they come to you, and different ways along the development of whatever they're doing, that they're looking at their work and they're kind of figuring out, okay, is this a level 3 I'm at right now? Maybe they work with a team of a couple other students and they try to make a judgment of where they're falling as far as aligning with the rubric. I think that's very powerful along the way, that formative assessment. And then, even as the teacher jumping in and giving some feedback at that level, formative, but throwing it back to the student of saying, here's the rubric, here's some examples, here's what you have, tell me where you think it falls right now, and then tell me why. Help me to understand why this would be a 3 or why this would be a 4, or what do you need to do to make it a 4. So that's powerful. That's powerful stuff, and you'll be amazed of what students will come up with, and putting them into the role of teacher, and including that formative assessment that a student led, or again a group of 4. I'm thinking of 4 students, where you have a desk facing each other, or whatever it is, a table, and maybe that they work together, or they could work together on a group project, and then make a decision on where they were at as far as aligning with the exemplars. But formative assessment, part of UDL, and then getting into that summative assessment, at the end, so you're measuring against the rubric and some other actual examples, which are not just a single item and not just also just a visual, so maybe it's a song, or maybe it's something that's put to narration, or whatever it is. I mean, there's so many ways you can go, or so many ways that kids can go with this stuff. I remember an assignment, and it was a demonstration of the concept of World War II, and students put together a radio show. They'd done a little bit of research on some of the radio broadcasts that would go out about, such as having to make sure that your lights were out at night and all these other things. So they did this, and then they recorded these broadcasts and kind of gave these updates, and then they had played that, and they put some background music from that time period to go along with it. And it was really powerful. I mean, and that's something I wouldn't have thought of, and I know the teacher was very impressed by that, very conceptual. So, and of course we've probably all seen the Mayflower taped out on the gym floor before Thanksgiving, and or I don't know when it's taped out, but here's the size of the Mayflower, and you had to fit so many things and barrels and people and whatever. So, but in universal design for learning, using the senses and using the different learning styles, I've become, I think, an incredibly skilled auditory educator, and then also a tactile educator. It's just become natural now in the environment I teach in to take students, with the hand and go over things, and as we describe, what they are. It could be anything, from plants to a dirt to a mound, and things like that, just concepts. Um, and yeah, just amazing. Again, many senses to use. Make sure that you're just not heavy on visual. There's a post I have. It links to a story about a UW musician who's blind. And one of the parts I think that's very significant in that story is that, there's a tendency to think of a person with a disability as taking from society. Society is making that accommodation to allow that person to engage and to access what everybody typically is able to access, everybody else. But in this case, and this happens more frequently than what we realize, but this young lady developed an entirely new way to write music and have certain chord and chord combinations documented. And she's done work since this video's been released, but has really kind of cracked the code on some very sophisticated higher end music. The way that it's composed. So she's really given that gift to the to society, to the world, and so many other gifts that have been given to us by people with disabilities. So again, for me, I use all of the senses, and for students who do have some type of vision, I do, we have a room where we have it completely dark, and if there's some light that they can make out, I'll utilize whatever vision that they do have. But I'm also, again, playing off of all of the senses, and I do have like a complete olfactory kit too to match. So it might be the smell of grass, and I might have a sound of birds, and an olfactory sound of grass, and then some actual grass clippings and things like that. So that is about it for this week. Again, universal design for learning, especially with technology, is becoming the door for that is opening wide. It's there are so many things that you can do today that you just couldn't do a few years ago. One example, students with a little flip cam or just a regular phone cam or whatever, making a video to demonstrate understanding and things like that. So I hope this video was helpful, and I'll keep you updated on my AdSense account, although I'm not thinking we're going to be moving too much off of that 1923. So, all right, I am still warm, and I'm going to get to video number 2 here before I lose the feelings and the tips of my fingers. But we're getting toward the end, everyone, so continue to post, and I'll have your Bill Porter plan. That won't be long, and that'll be posted, and then I think next week that gets posted, and then you'll be able to start in on that and really get to the point where we're wrapping up class in just a short amount of time. So again, thank you for your feedback, and that you've been active posters. You've really done a nice job, everybody, during this class. So thank you, and stay warm.